Now, I will try to show you some examples, of what I mean when I say, when I talk about discursive regularities and their recurrence. For instance, look at this statement from the European Commission, Rethinking Education paper. We have a discursive practice where you have the highlighting of a challenge. There is a construction of a problem. We have a challenge that we have to face, and the challenge is to prioritize public investment in the education and training sector, because we need to find more efficient ways, in order to promote structural reform, and which is the main lever for increasing the efficiency of investment, is to enhance quality, because we have to prevent the risk of failure. And again, if you just very quickly think about this, how many times you can recognize, the emergence of a conceptual chain like this. And there is also an attempt to create a subject who is responsible for. Member states have to develop models of cost sharing. The language is important here. This is from the Eurydice report I was commenting before. Where is, in what space discursive space evaluation is located? Quality assurance, we have to achieve, maintain, or enhance quality, and this rely on evaluation. So there is a strict connection between the way we conceive evaluation and the idea of assure quality. But I always understand evaluation. Look at this definition. I think it is very important. A general process of systematic and critical analysis of a defined subject that includes the collection of relevant data and leads to judgments or recommendations for improvement. And here you see the construction of also the subjects of this process, which are subjects and we could say also objects, to a certain extent. Schools head, teachers, educational staff, programs, local authority, or the performance of the whole education system. Or look at this one. This is a very interesting, visual representation. This is from the OECD 2013 report, which is titled Synergies for Better Learning and International Perspective on Evaluation and Assessment. And this is a model which is presented more or less at page 60, 70s of the report. This is a very big report, 600 pages. And this is a sort of, a very interesting discursive event, because somehow it's difficult to understand if this is an empirical attempt to describe a reality or it is a normative model, because they say this is where and how countries around the world are working. This is the model they are tending to. But we need to work in this direction, and there is again a double here. But what I want you to observe in this representation is which are the elements that are bring together and assembled in order to create what they call an holistic approach, an holistic framework, And so you have the goals of the education system that are defined in terms of student learning objectives. You have the student outcomes at the bottom, and in the middle you have, a space which is represented in terms of concentric circles. And you have levels, system, school, classroom practices. You have an environment, education policies, tradition, cultures, and values in education. You have things that you can define as processes, governance, design, implementation, use of results, capacity building. And you have subjects and objects, and again, practices which are organized at different levels. System evaluation, evaluation of subsystems. So you have the system, the subsystem, you have the school leader, you have the teacher, you have the program you have the policy, you have the student. I will go back on this. So I'm interested now just in try to make sense of the discursive regularities and have an idea of what I'm talking about when I say, discursive practice that are recurrent on the surface of history of our educational present. Another interesting, discursive practice is this one. This is from the International Institute of Educational Planning of the UNESCO, and it is called Improved Learning Model. And this is a tool for monitoring learning. And what they imagine here as a model, is a model that has as the first step the definition of indicators of learning and quality, the practice of assessments, the displacement of the employment of other monitoring tools, the developing of a monitoring framework, and the use of this data in order to monitor and improve. Look at also at the pictures, the kind of icons they are using in relation to each of the step. And look also at the way they represent in a linear way the process. Again, I will be back on this later on in the lecture. But just also have a look at the Saber model of the World Bank. I know that some of you are engaging with the research that is focused on school autonomy and accountability, or school autonomy with accountability. This is another discursive space where this issue come out. And look at some of the words, how they frame the issue of school autonomy and accountability in the spaces that I have tried to circle with the red lines. When the World Bank presents the Saber model, they say we need to, by deepening school autonomy and accountability, we can redefine incentive structures to create better conditions for teaching and learning. Here there is idea to use school autonomy and accountability in order to redefine an incentive structure, to create better condition for something to happen, which is teaching and learning. And when they come to the operational level, what do we have to do? We collect information, we classify and analyze, we diagnose on the top. Another example is the UNESCO EBA JECAF model. And again, you can recognize the recurrence, of some words, way of arguing, way of describing and conceptualizing the idea of quality, the relation between quality and evaluation, and the idea of producing something which is a diagnostic framework. And in this, process of knowledge production, a special role is played by, a sort of the disciplinary field, the one of economics of education. In the network, I try to reconstruct before, you know, a central place was played by this European expert network on economics and education, and economics of education as a discipline. And this is an analytical report that this network has prepared for the European Commission. They have very strict link, they are quite influential. And just try to have a look of what they write in one of the pages of this report. You know, education policymakers and practitioners want to know what works in order to achieve their goals. And so research is valuable, and so far it provides evidence-based. And in order to be evidence-based, we need to distinguish causation from accidental association. You know, that is a clear epistemological statement, let's say. And so, you know, we need to fight, to explore leading empirical strategies in order to identify causal impacts. Yeah? And we need to use that in order to illustrate their use with real-world examples. You know? Because, I mean, some other ways of knowing are not dealing with the real world, maybe. Which is another interesting idea. But this is not an attempt to be critical towards, you know, a specific epistemological position. I'm just trying to make sense of this. And so, for instance, they, you know, they try to legitimate a specific set of evaluation methods, controlled experiments, lotteries of oversubscribed programs, instrumental variables, regression, discontinuities, differences in differences, and panel data techniques. Again, I mean, try to think also at the language here. It is important from my point of view. School effectiveness and improvement is another, you know, subfield of knowledge production, which is very powerful in contributing, you know, to this activity of word making, this activity of creating a reality which is a viscosity, you know, which is effective. And here I took two, you know, statements from an author which is a key authoritative voice within the school effectiveness and improvement movement, Jaap Scherens, you know. And the first one is from an article of 1989. The second one is from an article which is more recent, is 2005. And it is interesting how, you know, in the attempt to make a sort of exercise of self-reflexivity on school effectiveness and improvement, they try to identify how, you know, effectiveness and improvement have been conceptualized within this research subfield. And the effectiveness criteria are, for instance, productivity. So there are ways of conceptualizing effectiveness in terms of productivity, or as adaptability, commitment, and continuity, or as responsiveness. You know, and of course this has some implication for the level of analysis chosen, the focus of interest, the theoretical background. You know, take the, I mean. Think about this in terms of, you know, how these people have engaged within the network I've tried to map before, to, you know, establish a sort of reality about what is educational evaluation, what is worth to be evaluated, what is the evaluator, what is the, and who is the evaluandum, and so on. What are the goals? And it is interesting to say how, you know, for instance, in the recent developments of in this field, we have a different conceptualization. You know, there is an attempt to integrate within this kind of conceptualization also, you know, new theories, cybernetics, theories on learning organization, the concept of autopoiesis that they take from Varela and Maturana, as far as I understand. And look at the last sentence. Autopoiesis offer a more evolutionary perspective than rational planning. They are trying to distance themselves from what they felt as a too rational way of understanding improvement, effectiveness and improvement. Another, interesting subspace, within the network I tried to map before is that of program evaluation. I don't know if you have had experiences in analyzing or dealing with some of the devices that are used for self-evaluation, within schools across the system in Europe. I have some detailed experience about the Italian situation, but as far as I understand, and the Erudice report is also very clear about this, in the structuring of the devices through which school evaluation is carried on across the countries, program evaluation has exerted an important influence, in setting the frame. Different people from the program evaluation field define evaluation as in this way. Evaluation is an attempt to determine the merit, worth, or value of things. Look at this sequence: merit, worth, or value. Again, the idea of the need for an empirical investigation, and here a direct reference to social sciences is made. And this is from Scriven, which is an interesting scholar which has a very clear position within the program evaluation tree. I know that someone of you is dealing with realistic evaluation from Posen, but the way these people define evaluation has some recursivity. Look at the definition from Alkin. Here, value again is a central concept, and there is a distinction between the intrinsic value of an entity, and the extrinsic aspects to be considered. So, an intrinsic and extrinsic, internal and external. And again, there is the recurrence of the association between value, merit, and worth. And the statement from the joint committee make the focus on another interesting aspect. The value is always in relation to a purpose. And this is a visual representation of the CIPP evaluation model, the context, input, process, and product. This is from a scholar from program evaluation, Daniel Staffelbein. It was elaborated in the 70s and has been revised, during the years. And from my exploration, this is one of the models which is most influential in inspiring national agencies or national think tanks in designing and constructing for instance, the tools, the devices that are used as self-evaluation devices within schools. In Italy, our agency has explicitly declared that they have relied on this model in order to project the self-evaluation process and also the relation between the self-evaluation process, the internal evaluation, and the external evaluation. And here you can see there is an attempt to represent this in terms of circularity, but it is also possible to see some linear, relations. You have the input evaluation, the process evaluation, the product evaluation, and the context evaluation. And sometimes, depending on the approach, the starting point change. But more or less the relation And you have at the center of the model core values, and core values are mediating, you know, in respect to the different aspects of evaluation. So goals are the mediating element between context and core values, outcomes between product and core values, action between process evaluation and core values, plans between input and core values.